Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We are officially in the month of March. And the thing for a lot of college football fans who live and breathe this sport, y'all know what this means. One, we got spring ball starting up. And for Florida specifically, we got spring ball starting up on Thursday. We are less than 48 hours away from Florida kicking off spring practice. But I think, secondly, this is the time period where you really get a sense of where this Florida program is going on the recruiting trail and who are the top targets that Florida's going to be pushing their chips into the middle of the table for. I want to preview some of the names that intrigue me the most in terms of guys that will be on campus for Florida over the next couple of days and weeks. I want to start with this idea. And this is something that the Florida fans who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of weeks, we've talked about it. This to me is the first real offseason where Florida has had positive momentum. I mean, especially you go back 12 months ago, I mean, we were talking about this Florida team in spring practice with this overarching story of how long is Billy Napier going to be in Gainesville. And really, since Billy Napier has gotten to Florida, it's been a roller coaster of a ride. And there's been a lot of conversation about where is this program going. And now you fast forward to where we sit right now at the beginning of March in 2025 and say, one, there's a lot of positive feeling about what this Florida team can be in 2025. I've been very vocal that this is a college football playoff caliber team in terms of the talent they have on this roster. They can do some really dangerous things in the 2025 year. But also, secondly, you go back to what we saw in 2024, specifically how good a football this football team was playing, and say, all right, you look at that team and say that they had a freshman quarterback, freshman running back, freshman linebacker and Miles Graham. This Florida team not only was playing really good in the month of November, they had a lot of young players doing it. And I think all of a sudden you look at this Florida team and say they got a lot to offer on the recruiting trail. A team that I think is clearly going in the right direction. A lot of young talent is getting the opportunity to play. All of a sudden, this is by far the most attractive this Florida program has been to recruits on the trail since Billy Napier's gotten there. Billy Napier's been, better than I think people realize on the recruiting trail the last 2 years. What does it look like in this 2026 class with some legitimate buzz and momentum around this program? That's what excites me the most. Now, I want to get into, to me, some of the most intriguing names that are popping up for Florida. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Florida fans. It's been really fun talking this program the last 2-3 months, and the amount of support y'all have shown the fellas has been absolutely amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And this is kind of a fun conversation for me because it allows me to talk about some of my favorite kids at the high school ranks. And I want to start with an off-ball linebacker in Shadarius Toodle. What I'm looking for Florida is that this is the kind of linebacker they want on this football team. And you look at all the success that some of these young linebackers have had with Florida over the last 12 months. Talking about guys like Graham and Childs, guys like Jaden Robinson, Pup Howard. If you're Shadarius Toodle, who right now is a more of a raw linebacker that has incredible physical upside in terms of the traits that he possesses, you're looking at Florida, you're looking at what Ron Roberts has done with these off-ball linebackers and saying, this is a spot where I am seeing young linebackers get better at football really, really fast. How can this not be a destination that is extremely exciting to me to kind of throw my hat in the ring and join this linebacker room that I think is one of the most talented linebacker rooms that you see in the country going into the 2025 year, and players are getting better. You look at Shadarius Toodle, the reason I love him so much is, one, he's long and he's really fast. And that's where this era of college football is right now, where you look at opposing offenses. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get you out in space. They're trying to use every blade of grass on the football field and really force opposing defenses to run, chase, and tackle in space. If you want to have success in this era of college football on the defensive side of the football, you need your linebackers to be really athletic and really fast. And Shadarius Toodle is that kind of guy. Now, he's got to put some weight on that frame, 6'3", and he looks just about 210 pounds. Once he does that, and maintains that athleticism, that length, that athleticism, that's going to be a problem. And he's a guy that can be really versatile too, which, look, Ron Roberts wants to get creative in terms of how he uses these linebackers, blitzing off the edge, dropping back in coverage. I look at Shadarius Toodle and say he can do all the things that are required in the Ron Roberts defense. This would be a massive get for the Florida Gators on the recruiting trail. One of my favorite off-ball linebacker prospects. He's not a finished product. A guy like Graham, when Graham committed to Florida, we said he's probably going to play early. Shadarius Toodle, probably not so much, but a guy you want to stash away and kind of see what that development looks like over the next couple of years, because the upside is serious with a guy like Shadarius Toodle. The next name I want to throw out here is Naeem Burroughs, and it sounds like there's some serious buzz. You've already seen some crystal balls come in for Florida. We talked about this kid a couple of weeks ago, so I'll keep it quick here. For the new Florida Gator listeners, this is, in my opinion, Eugene Wilson part 2. And there's so much to like about this kid. 10.6, 100-meter dash speed. I mean, he is a legit burner in a straight line, but that's not even his best trait. When you run a 10.6 in the 100-meter dash, and that's not your best trait, it means you're doing something right. Best trait by far is the quick twitch. Very similar to how we talked about with Eugene Wilson, where, look, Eugene Wilson is fast too. We knew he was fast coming out of high school, but what we loved about Eugene Wilson is how dynamic he was with the football in his hands. And we've seen that the first 2 years within this Florida Gators team. To me, I look at Naeem Burroughs and say that this is Eugene Wilson part 2. You get the football into his hands any way you want, and good things are going to happen. And he has that verticality because he's not a small guy. I mean, he's pushing 6 foot, 180 pounds with 10.6 speed. He can burn you vertically if you want, but when you get the football into this kid's hands, good things happen. And you're starting to really stockpile some legit dynamic weapons in this wide receiver room. Right? You look at a guy like Vernell Brown, very, very similar conversation, elite short area quicks, dynamic with the football in their hands. I like what Florida's doing in terms of putting a lot of not only different kind of wide receivers, but a lot of just dynamic dudes in this wide receiver room over the last couple of classes. Going to the offensive line, a position that I think Florida wants to hammer. And Billy Napier wants to have a strong presence on the recruiting trail. Felix Ojo, he to me will finish as a top 15 national prospect. This is one of the more impressive offense. He's really young for his grade. So he's going into his senior year. He's only 16 years old right now. 6'6", 275, looks closer to 300 as he's going into his senior year. Phenomenal athlete, big time physicality. He is the definition of a box checker. And you look at Florida and say, hey, you want to make sure you get these guys out of the high school ranks. One of the things I love the most about Florida going into the 2025 season is the offensive line continuity. Why have they been able to maintain that continuity? Because they've been doing a good job stacking blue chip talent on the offensive line out of the high school ranks. They don't have to go to the transfer portal and rebuild their offensive line like a lot of other programs in the country have to. And even after this year, where you're probably going to lose, 4 out of your 5 starters after the 2025 season, there's a lot of guys who are in that 2 deep that are blue chip guys that we think can come in and play for Florida in the 2026 year. Why do they have that benefit of not having to go to the portal? Because they've been doing a good job stacking blue chip talent. Felix Ojo is the definition of blue chip talent at the offensive tackle spot. Another name, Kenny Pepe, IMG Academy. Now, Florida's probably on the outside looking in on this one, but you get him on campus and you maybe get an official visit in the summer, good things are going to happen, right? And Kenny Pepe is a laboratory-built guy. You build a premier left tackle in a laboratory in the SEC, and it spits out an image of a guy like Kenny Pepe, 6'7", 320, elite footwork for that size. And that's the thing that stands out. It's hard to find 6'7", 320 offensive tackles that move the way Kenny Pepe does. What excites me about this kid is, kind of a certified blue chip talent right now. I think there's a lot of growth here because he's a guy that I still don't see a ton of physicality in his game just yet. And I know the physicality is going to come. He's 6'7", 320. If you add a little bit more physicality and play strength to Kenny Pepe's game and playing with a little bit better pad level, this kid can be a multi-year starter, offensive tackle in the SEC. You land one of Kenny Pepe, Felix Ojo, you feel really good about your offensive line class in the 2025 year, or in the 2026 cycle, I should say. Two other names that I'll buzz by: Jake Cruel, IMG Academy kid again. And Florida's going to have a bunch of IMG Academy kids come to campus over the next couple of weeks. Jake Cruel is a very, very exciting edge rusher. And what I love most about him, he's probably one of, if not the most polished edge rusher that I've seen in this 2026 class. He's got a really ferocious motor. The play strength is certainly there. The physical specs might not be as insane as some other edge rushers, but in terms of a guy that I look at and say, yeah, he's going to play multiple years for Florida, and he's probably going to be an all SEC guy. He's one of the safest prospects in this 2026 class. And what I mean by that is you're not going to miss on him. Now, there are some top 100 national prospects that are simply just projection. Hey, if the physical traits pan out, they'll be good football players. Jake Cruel's already a really good football player that has the physical traits you want. One of my favorite players in the 2026 class, and very interested to see if Florida can really make a move for Jake Cruel. Last guy I want to talk about, Brody Jennings. Now, as a Michigan fan, watched a lot of Brody Jennings, like him in our 2026 class. This one, I'd be surprised if it sticks with Michigan. Miami's after him. Florida's after him. Georgia's after him. Florida's had a lot of success at Mandarin in Jacksonville, Florida. They pulled a lot of really talented kids out of that high school over the last couple of years, most notably in the 2025 class. And Brody Jennings is kind of a box-checking cornerback. And you look at Brody Jennings and say, there's not necessarily that one trait that stands out to you. Good frame, really smooth athlete, plays the football in the air. Again, one of those guys that you feel like is probably not going to miss at the SEC level. Kind of reminds you maybe a little bit of a guy like Deshaun Johnson. And so I look at Florida, and I think the biggest storyline for me is they're going to take some big swings in this 2026 class, and this is the cycle to do so, because this is by far the most positive momentum Florida has had on the recruiting trail since Billy Napier's gotten there. And again, the last 2 years have not been bad on the recruiting trail for Florida. This could be the best one yet. And we'll see if Billy Napier and Florida can kind of capitalize on all that positive momentum. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Spring practice starting up Thursday. We got plenty to talk about. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.